Today I am in Villanova, Pennsylvania, talking with Vicenc Feliu, who is the Associate Dean for Library Services and Associate Professor of Law at Villanova University's College of Law. Vicenc has been in this position since January 2012, having come here from the District of Columbia, where he was the director at the DC School of Law back in the good old days. I was once there too in that city. I understand that you have a master's degree in library science and other degrees. Could you tell us a little bit about your academic background?
Absolutely. Before we get started, though, I'd like to thank you and thank the members of the project for having me be part of this. I think this is a wonderful project, and I'm really happy and proud that you included me.
Thank you.
I also like to thank Hein and definitely Dick Spinelli, who was a great guy and just a fabulous, fabulous person. I'm very happy to be part of that project, so thank you so much.
Well, full disclosure being what it is, I'm having such a grand time going around doing this that I can't even take the credit. I'm very pleased that Dick's asked me to be part of this, and it's a lot of fun.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
great.
Well, let's talk about your academic background, and then maybe when we finish that, before we move into your career, let's talk a little bit about your life, perhaps when you were young and more currently too.
So yeah, I went to undergraduate at California State University in Fullerton. I got a bachelor's in linguistics. Originally, I wanted to be a musician, and my original major in college was music, but it turns out that I have no talent whatsoever. So I had to give that up in favor of linguistics, which I enjoyed, and it was a great area of study. Then several years went by, a lot of years went by before I went to law school. Went to Franklin Pierce. I was interested in IP, and I had a nephew that was going to Franklin Pierce at the time, and he led me to that school, and I was really happy to have gone there. It was a great school, and I really enjoyed being there. I completed the JD at Franklin Pierce, and while I was doing my JD, I began to do work on an LLM in IP. Then after that, I went to the University of Washington, where I got my MLIS at the program, and then after that is when I finished my LLM. Between that time, I did get a teaching certificate from Virginia. So that's it.
So if your day job broke down, you could run across the river when you were working in D.C. and
Right.
take up teaching on the other side of the Potomac.
Right. That was always a possibility, right?
Yes.
Right.
Probably not one that you really wanted to do.
No, definitely not. So my life, well, I'm Catalan. My father's people, we're Catalan. We're from Andorra, and my father's people have been in Andorra and in what we call the northern area of the Principality since the year dot. I mean, we go back to the 800s back there. So I'm the child of two families that were displaced by the Spanish Civil War. My father's family, Catalans, my mother's family, they came to Catalonia fairly recent in 1714. So,
well, I guess over there, that's recent history.
that's
I mean, I
recent.
saw the Roman bridge in one town.
At Tarragona, probably.
Yeah, where the cathedral with the Lady of the Pillar is.
Yes, that's Zaragoza.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's right down the street, literally, from the cathedral.
Yeah. So, I mean, that area, has been settled since before the Romans came, and so 300 years is fairly recent history.
Well, it's interesting to see that bridge. It's still in use. I imagine a lot of them are after a couple of thousand years, and we build them around at least where I live, and after 40 or so years, they either need to be rebuilt or they need to be replaced.
2,000 years and they're still working, right?
Absolutely. Now they're a little narrow for current vehicles.
Yeah.
I think this one is now relegated to pedestrians only.
That's right. Yeah, and. So my mother's father was Basque, That's another interesting thing. And you know, the basket, they're the original people from the Iberian Peninsula, so that goes by a little bit. And we came to the States when I was 12 years old. I grew up in California, in Southern California, and that's why I ended up going to Cal State Fullerton as an undergrad. Yeah, just right down the street from where I grew up.
Well, I'm intrigued that, like you have a library degree, or now whatever it's called, information science degree, from the University of Washington in Seattle. You studied under Penny Hazelton, who came through the program herself a few years after I did. She's quite an accomplished mentor. Everybody speaks very highly of her, and I think with good reason. And many of you have gone through the program and made it very successful in terms of producing an awful lot of our colleagues who have themselves, like yourself, have become rather prominent in the right sense of the term. And that's good. In terms of how you became a law librarian, was there anybody who perhaps played a role? You have a variety of degrees, you've mentioned, and you could have done, among other things, teaching in Virginia, if you wanted to, somewhere along there. But you became a law librarian, and could you tell us a little bit about what it was that attracted you to that? Was there somebody, perhaps, who played a role, or even more than one person?
Yeah, you know, like I said, I went to Franklin Pierce, and I've been interested in law school for a long time. But I went to Franklin Pierce as a rather unconventional student with, you know, over 20 years after I had finished my undergraduate degree. And although Franklin Pierce does tend to have that kind of unconventional student, being an IP school, they're looking for people with advanced degrees in science, and you know, for the patents program. But for me, I've been thinking about law school for a long time, and I had, like I said, I had a nephew that was going there at the time. He talked to me about the school. I went and visited the school, and you know, I applied, got accepted, and I got there and started going through school. And two things happened. One is that I really liked law school. I'm the weird guy that really loved law school. Most people tell you they hate it. I loved it. Yeah. The other thing was that I wasn't so sure that I wanted to leave the law school, right? I really thought, how do I work this boat so I can stay in school?
And permanent student status. Become a faculty member.
Right, exactly right. How do I go about doing this? So I had the very extreme good fortune of having my faculty advisor be Judy Geyer, who at the time was the director of the Law Librarian at Franklin Pierce. And I remember that one of my interviews with her, I walked in and I said, Judy, I'm not going to quit law school, but this being a lawyer thing may not be for me. So, you know, can you help me out? And she said, well, you know, have you thought about becoming a law librarian? And it was just like the light bulb went on. You know, she gave me some stuff to read, and she took me under her wing, and she really, you know, guided me, mentored me, and I was really fortunate that there were a lot of good people at the Franklin Pierce Law Library who were just wonderful, and all of them took me under their wing, and you know, Barry Shanks from the program at UW, Roberta Woods was now in Hawaii, just Cindy Landau, just I don't want to forget anybody's name, but everybody was just tremendous.
Yeah, that's the trouble when you mention names, and after the interview's over, this conversation, you'll think of others. But,
right, and I'll say, oh, how could I have done that? You know, but yeah, so those people were tremendously helpful, and that's what guided me in the path of law librarianship. Yeah.
Well, that sounds like a nice experience. Yeah. Now you, as you already alluded to, you were about 20 years, should we say, senior to your students, fellow students, some of them. Yeah. Could you talk about perhaps what you were doing in the meantime before, you know, from your original post-high school college work to when you finally decided to make this leap into a whole different field?
I had a really checkered career, so yeah, you know, after I left college, actually, after I left college, I had kids and 2 kids, and I wanted to, move back to the motherland to have my kids
Mm-hmm.
spend a little time there, realize that their Catalan nature and so forth. So I spent a couple of years in Tarragona, just about 60 miles south of Barcelona, on the Med, and it was a great thing. But it's all good things must come to an end. So I came back to the States and I joined the Marine Corps.
Oh.
And I went to officers candidate school at Quantico.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a series of different specialties and different postings. I was posted at Quantico, I was posted at Camp Pendleton,
Mm-hmm.
I was posted at Naval Air Station Sigonella in Sicily, and my final duty station was in Cherry Point, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
So I went from a second lieutenant to the rank of major, and things had kind of developed, and at that time, it was we had gone through the first Gulf War, and it was the end of history. We weren't going to need the big, huge standing military that we had at the time, and so there were some offers for early retirement and early separation, and I took advantage of that. And I left the Marine Corps because I was getting to the point that it would have been too early to join the FBI, and that was one of the things that I had always thought about too. I had kept that in the back of my mind, that I wanted to go to the bureau as an agent.
Mm-hmm.
And so I left the Marine Corps, and the process to get into the bureau took about a year. So I spent that time teaching English, not English. I taught Spanish and French in North Carolina for about a year. And then I went to the FBI Academy. My last specialty in the Marine Corps had been intelligence. So when I graduated from the Academy, I was placed in Washington, D.C. at the Washington Metropolitan Field Office as a counterintelligence agent with the counterintelligence, one of the counterintelligence departments. So I did that, and that was a great job, but it was a hard job.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those things that is not for everybody, and it wasn't for me. So I decided that I needed to come up with yet another plan B, and that's when I left the FBI, and I went to teach at high school in Northern Virginia. I taught Spanish in Northern Virginia, and I was a Marine officer. I was a major Marines. I was a special agent in the FBI in the counterintelligence field, and I got to tell you, the hardest job I ever had was being a high school teacher.
Mm-hmm.
That is one hard job. And so I just started thinking about, well, I got to do something else with my life. I can't be a teacher for 20 years. And that's when I started looking into going to law school.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what brought me about the full circle, so to speak.
Well, as you say, it took a while, but you evolved, and now here you are
Right.
in Villanova. And before that, you were at the University of the District of Columbia as the head librarian. You want to talk a little bit about your career, some of the positions you've had, perhaps a little bit about what you accomplished in them, or think was good, or whatever, why you enjoyed them.
Sure.
And particularly end up perhaps here at Villanova, where you've been for a couple of years or so.
So yeah, when I graduated from the program in 2005, I got a job at LSU, and I started at LSU as the Foreign Comparative and International Law Librarian. And that was a great job. I loved that job. It was fabulous. They have a really tremendous foreign and international collection that's really undervalued, underappreciated. People don't realize outside of LSU what a jewel that they have down there. And it was a great experience, a great learning experience for me, because I had to dive in head first into the world of civil law, which, I'm a commoner, common law guy.
Even with your background
Right?
in Spain.
Right? That doesn't make any difference.
But it wasn't
right?
this background.
It wasn't
in
this
Spain,
background, right? So I got hired at LSU, and I had to dive in. I was working very closely with the people at the Civil Law Center, especially with Alain Levasseur, Professor Alain Levasseur, who was a great help, a mentor, and just a great friend. He really was somebody that really took care of me and led me down the path of becoming a civilian. And I learned a lot from him. And so one of the big things that I did over there was I worked with the Civil Law Center with Professor Levasseur and with Professor Olivier Moreto, putting together I was there at the time of the bicentennial, the digest of 1808. And so we wanted to put the civil law online. And I worked with Vic Irvin and Agustin Parise, and we put together the Civil Law Online website, and it was a tremendous effort, and it's still at the LSU website. If you get a chance, take a look at it. It's their plug. It was just, we took the Delaverne volume and we digitized it, and we had it transcribed, and it's just a thing of beauty. So I think that was one of my very big accomplishments there. The other big accomplishment that I had there, and I'm thankful to Alain Levasseur for this, was that Alain had written a history on the life of Moreau Lillet, who was the writer, one of the two co-writers of the Digest of 1808. And when he did that revision of that book, he very kindly included me and allowed me to help him, and gave me co-author credit in that book, which he needn't have, but he did. That's the kind of person that he is. So that was a great project. Learned a lot from that project too. So I spent 3 years and 10 months at LSU. I went from the Foreign Comparative and International Law Librarian to being the Assistant Director for Public Services in those 3 years and 10 months. I got there the day before Katrina.
Oh, well, at least you weren't right on the coast.
So we were lucky that we didn't get any of that, the water or any of that craziness, but we had the students come from Tulane, and we had the students come from Loyola, and we had to get, the publishers to give us books to give these students materials because they had lost everything they had.
Well, they actually came then to Baton Rouge, I think,
Yes.
to study for a while,
Yes.
because their places were no longer usable.
Yes, and there were schools throughout the country. There were some students that came here to Villanova from Tulane.
I understand American U took some in.
Yes.
I imagine you're right. They were basically, the profession thought that people needed to continue to have the opportunity, and we just had to be a little more creative on how we got it.
Right, and they couldn't offer classes to the students because the facilities have been flooded.
Yes.
Right, so those poor students that were in New Orleans, they couldn't go back to school. 5 days later, so they had to go somewhere, and a lot of schools took them in. We took a lot at LSU, and so it was that whole craziness, and so that was a baptism of fire.
Oh, I imagine it was quite an experience. One you presumably do not want to repeat.
Right, exactly right. So after that time, then I went to UDC, and Shelley Broderick, the dean at UDC, gave me the opportunity to become the director there, and she's a fantastic person also.
Oh, I worked with her. She was at Antioch, one of the predecessor places. She's been in legal education in the D.C. area for many years.
She is a force of nature.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Super person, too.
Super person, and I got to tell you, Shelley was just wonderful to me. She gave me that opportunity to take over the directing of the law library there. A lot of great people at UDC. My staff, every single one of them. Starting with my associate director, who's now the associate dean for library services there.
All right.
Helen Fraser, and just working all the way down to everybody. They were just fabulous, tremendous people.
You're even an interesting neighborhood because about 2 blocks away is the Howard University Law School and
Right,
Library.
right.
And about a mile, you're down at American U, where I
It's
used to
AU,
be.
yeah. And I don't
We're
know-
all close neighbors.
Right, and I don't know if you know this or not, but my wife, Charlene Kane, she's also a law librarian,
Oh.
and she worked at AU when we first got there.
Oh,
And then she moved over to Howard and worked at Howard for Rhea Ballard-Thor, who was another great friend of mine.
oh, she's a good person
And just
too.
another force of nature.
She was somebody, I'll tell a story out of, even on camera, but in the period before she came, there was a previous search, and she was somebody that they really wanted to attract. And I was on the search committee because they didn't have another person who really, they felt knew the library end of the thing, so they asked me to help out, in fact, on both searches, and oh, we were so pleased, and they were, well, I was pleased too, because she was a good librarian and a good
Right.
friend, and I was so pleased when she came the second time, she decided to accept the offer and come and be the law librarian there. She's still there.
She's
been
still there.
Quite a while now.
You know, and still large and in charge.
Yeah.
You know, she is somebody that is just, like I said, a force of nature. She's tremendous, and I'm really glad to count her as a friend. Same thing with Billy Joe over at American, who
Yeah.
took over after you.
Well, we shared a lot of each other's students.
Right.
Ours would want to go someplace where nobody knew them, like when they were before finals and didn't want to be interrupted. So they'd go over to your place
Right.
or Howard, and vice versa. Your students would come.
Yeah.
We mixed each other up student-wise. They'd come and study at the nearby place, so they would be able to get more done, presumably.
So, to me, UDC was one of the great things about that was that cross-pollination that we had, that we were so close to American, we were so close to Howard, literally across the street, and I had 2 experienced directors right there.
Mm-hmm.
When I came in, brand new director, and I have Billy Jo, who's an experienced, strong director. She was a great mentor to me, took great care of me
We were
there.
very fortunate to
Very
attract her
fortunate
to
to have
American
her.
when I retired.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And America's very fortunate to have her. She works so hard for American, it's incredible. And she works so hard for her profession too. And Rhea, who's another fantastic director, and she mentored me and took care of me too, right?
Yeah.
So I really
Well, Rhea
appreciate it.
almost didn't make it into the profession. In her interview, she talks about how she was recruited in, and she was working with Bill James.
Right, right.
And Bill said to her one day, I think you ought to be a law librarian. Now, I may be not phrasing it quite right, but the next part I remember vividly. What's that? So that was the response. That does not start off right.
Well, that was kind of like me and Judy Geyer when she says, "Have you thought about law librarianship?" And I was like, "Oh, wait a minute." So yeah. So it's those lucky things, right? That we are fortune smiles on us by giving us these great people
Yeah.
that just take care and help and promote and move us forward. And
We don't compete with each other in the negative fashion.
Right.
We help each other.
right,
I remember that throughout my career.
Right.
You've now said it. I've heard it on a number of these conversations from.
it's a complementary competition, right?
Yes.
We want to do well. We want to be the best, but everybody around us is willing to help each other and let people shine and move forward and support. It's a great profession. It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. So anyhow, let me get back to UDC for a
All right.
second. So you asked me about my project at UDC, and one of the things that the biggest thing that I did at UDC was that creation of that embedded program. At UDC, the librarians didn't teach legal research, and so they didn't have a lot of chances to have that pedagogical interaction with the students.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt that they were missing something, and I got together with Helen Fraser, and we kicked some ideas around. And one of the things that we came up with was this idea of the embedded librarian, right? Clinics are supposed to be a practicing environment. It's supposed to be just like mini little law firms, and so we said, well, we could put a librarian in there. We can get somebody to work with the students and then that way they will get that pedagogical interaction. So Helen and I worked with the clinical director, Joe Tolman, and we kicked off a program, and we got that off the ground, and it was very successful, and it expanded, and we were able to, track the measurement of the students that took the program versus the students that didn't take the program, and how well they could do in legal research and so forth, and so it was a tremendously successful program that I'm really glad that I was part of that. And like I said, everyone there, all of the people that work in that library just work really hard to make things happen. So that was my project there. And then here, this is a place that is, you look around this building, it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
These people have
And
done
relatively new, about 5 years old.
5 years old,
Since
right?
you opened it, or they opened it, you came after.
I wasn't here,
Yeah. You were smart, you came after they had this nice
I
fancy
let them
place.
do all the heavy work, right? And
Stay long enough and there'll be some renovations.
right. And so they have a good, solid, strong staff. Great librarians, people that are really hardworking. They're teaching legal research. In the first year, they're teaching advanced legal research. They have been just tremendous. So my focus here has been that thing about let's move into those electronic resources. Let's move into that 21st century electronic library without borders, that kind of a thing. And so my big project here first was the creation of a digital repository for the school, and we went through Digital Commons with that. And we've worked, we put together a really robust digital repository. And I say we, that's the imperial we. It's the librarians that I have here that work real hard to make this happen. The other thing too is again, that imperial we, the website. We recalibrated the website and created a working group with members of the staff throughout the law school, and we had two young, strong librarians, Lori Strickler and Ben Carlson, who headed that project, and we put together a great website, and the dean's very happy with it. The staff and faculty are very happy with it, and the students are happy with it. So that's a good thing. So that was my big project here.
Well, one of the things, as a retiree, I don't have ready access to a bunch of books in the other room like I had for a long time when I was working. So I do a lot of work online through the computers that I have, and looking at websites is fairly common. As I plan these visits to colleagues that we want to talk to on camera for the history, I have occasion to look at a lot of those websites to find out something about them. People we're thinking of inviting to be part of it, or have already invited, and I'm doing a little more research to hopefully be not sitting here and look completely stupid because I don't know anything that we're talking about. And you do have a good website.
Thank you.
Some of them are harder to work with. Some law school websites, because often I'll come in that way, because I won't know what the library is, but I can figure the law school out, and then I can find the library. But sometimes it's hard to move from one office to another. And I don't know if that's intentional or just oversight. I hope it's the latter.
We worked on my team here, they worked on putting together the website, not just for the library, but for the law school.
Yeah, it's integrated nicely.
It's that integration, that synergy is what we were looking for.
Yeah. So you go to it and you find your way around pretty readily.
Right.
That's important.
Absolutely.
Being a user of this sort, I want to have it the easy way.
Right.
Not have to try. Now, where would they hide that?
Right, that's the target. We want to get you, the user, to say, I know how I can find it. Not where is it hidden.
Yeah.
Right, you're absolutely right.
Good. Let me put on your predicting hat a second here, if you don't mind. Where do you think we're going to be moving as a profession, or legal education in general, law libraries that service them in particular?
Well, you really know that we are, legal education in general, and libraries in particular, we are going through a sea change, a huge sea change. And you know, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the answer is that if you can't change, if you cannot weather that change, if you cannot set your sails to go with that change, you'll sink. You know, we can't live, legal education can't live and survive and thrive the way that it has for the last 100 years. And the library definitely will not thrive the way that it was 20 years ago. I just finished doing a TEDx type talk at American on Friday that Michel Piston, one of our professors here, worked with Billy Joe Kaufman to put together. And you know, in the focus of legal education, and we were talking about the changes, the things that we got to do, and one of the big changes that we got to look at is the pedagogy. We got to change the pedagogy of legal education. We definitely have to focus on that experiential learning component. So take that to the side of the library, right? We are the duty experts when it comes to research, and we know that no matter how you change it, lawyers in the future are going to need to know how to do research. And we have, there's this term that keeps being kicked around, digital native. Just because somebody is a digital native doesn't make them information literate. That's the problem, that we're confusing the digital native with an information literate, a person who's information literate. And so our focus has to be on creating those information literate people. Our focus has to be on managing that information, on marshaling that information, creating the access, helping, synergizing, maximizing, because that's where the future is for us. You know, the artifact, the book, I love the artifact. And most of us who are librarians love the artifact. And as an intellectual property guy, as a guy that focuses on the concept of copyright law, the artifact will be around for a while longer than most people think. It will be. Just as a fixture of copyright law, the artifact will be around a lot longer than we think it will be. But access to information will be beyond the artifact. So we have to move beyond the artifact. We have to really become those information experts or managers to be able to survive.
Sort of why libraries developed in the first place.
Exactly right.
Was books became more the ordinary media and more numerous in libraries, we had to figure out, or a device had to be created to access these things sensibly. And now with all the digital media and the huge expansion, it's got to be the same thing all over again.
Exactly.
The change you described's got to be that.
Right.
How do we move with that reality and accommodate to servicing the new needs that result from it?
And you know, this is something that I learned from one of my previous life: improvise, adapt, and overcome. If you cannot improvise, if you cannot adapt, you will not overcome. And you know, that's what we have to do. We have to do that.
I remember various points in my own career, and I was obviously in the transition. It was almost all books when I came in the 60s, and then became books and other types of media, mostly things that nobody wanted to use, but it, you know, hear or go down to the Library of Congress is what we used to say.
Right, right.
And they stayed and used the microfilm, but or microfiche,
Right.
and then so we adjusted to that, and then Lexis and Westlaw and some of the other databases came in, and we were seeing a lot of change. And you know, I used to think, you know, it's a very exciting time to be a law librarian. You know, those that preceded us didn't see that kind of a change.
Right.
But now, I guess, it must be all the more
Right. You know.
rapid change and tremendous changes with all these new ways of accessing information digitally that are coming on. To say nothing of new names of the companies selling them to them.
Right. You know, it's just it's like a snowball.
Yeah,
It really is.
it's got to be an exciting time.
It definitely is.
Scary, but exciting.
You know.
Well, we thought it was scary and exciting in our
Right,
day.
right. that doesn't change.
Uh-huh.
That when you're facing that the shift in paradigms, it's always a white knuckle time place,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
You shift it, you change that paradigm, and people just it's very anxiety causing.
Mm-hmm.
It's scary.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, you got to face that fear. You got to move forward.
Yeah.
You got to grab the bull by the horns.
But the satisfaction of doing it
Huh?
and looking back and saying, gee, here's where we were, and now look where we are,
Right.
and I had something to do with that.
Right. That's exciting.
That's exciting.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
satisfaction. You've really meant something to the place and to the people with whom you work.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you do things other than work all the time. Vicenc, why don't we talk about, you must have some hobbies. I know you do because we mentioned one before we went on camera, and I may have moved just enough so that I don't know if that camera shows behind me on the counter or not, but before I preempt what I'm going to ask you by answering it, let me ask if you have any particular hobbies, passions, or other interests that you do, perhaps outside of work.
I got more hobbies than Carter's got liver pills.
Good.
I'm a competitive fencer to begin
Uh-huh.
with. I've been fencing since I was a kid. I learned from my father. I taught my son.
Uh-huh.
I hope to teach my grandson. I did it. I did it as a kid. I did it in college. I was an NCAA rated fencer. Then I became back when it was called the AFLA, the American Fencing, the Amateur Fencing League of America. I was rated in the AFLA. Then when it became the USFA, the United States Fencing Association, I was rated in that. I still fence, but I don't fence at that level anymore. I'm fencing more in competitions at the club level, and that's it. I've slowed down quite a bit, but I still enjoy it quite a bit. I'm a competitive shooter. I started shooting competitively in the Marine Corps, and I had shot before. I used to hunt. I haven't hunted in years. I gave up hunting 1 year for Lent, and I never did it again. So I'm still a competitive shooter. I don't shoot as many disciplines as I used to. When I was in the Marine Corps, I used to shoot long range, high power rifle, and I like to quote that. I like to paraphrase that line from that movie and said, it's not that I can use a rifle, it's just that I don't have a use for a rifle. So right now I basically just shoot pistols. I shoot 2700, which is a game in which you shoot 3 different pistols for a grand total of 270 bullets, shots, which is a long game. It's a tiring game. When you get to the end of the day, you're exhausted, but it's a good exhausting feeling. Photography, that's my other hobby that we talked about earlier on.
Yeah.
And,
The people viewing this do not see all the gadgets in the room with the lights here and there, a couple of cameras,
Right.
which we, hopefully, if I placed them all right, you're not going to see them, but it does make all this work.
right, it's all that.
But you and I were talking about your photography and the Photoshop work that you can do.
And doing the tricks of the trade, so I love photography. It's a great hobby. I again started photography very early. I started photography with my dad's Kodak Brownie, the box camera. Man.
Oh yeah, those were around for a long time.
They were around
various
for a long time.
Versions.
Yeah, and I had one of those. Well, it was my dad's, and it was sitting around somewhere in the attic, and he gave it to me when I was like 8 years old, and that's
Did it have a bellows that came out?
It did.
That
it
old
did,
old
yeah.
style.
Yeah, the old style, the 120 film. The big,
The big wide
rolls.
Yeah.
Yeah, medium format.
That's right. It was easy to process
Yeah.
in the darkroom of the era.
right, and so I did that and once I had a couple of breaks in for years when I was in the Marine Corps. It was kind of hard to do, but I had darkroom set up in the house before, and I like to work wet darkroom, and I still shoot film. You can't see them, but those pictures on the back wall there, those are film. It was just a fantastic hobby. It just keeps you, you do it, you know how it's like. It keeps you active. It keeps you thinking, because you have to think. You have to deal with the light, and it's just a great hobby. And motorcycles. I love motorcycles. I ride motorcycles. That's it's. I didn't do that for years too, but now I'm back doing it, and I'm enjoying it. I'm trying to get into an old 1950s thumper, big single cylinder, huge engine that just thumps down the road, and so that's it.
Do you do any long distance riding or just sort of around this area?
I'm getting too comfortable in my old age to be doing long distance riding.
I've always wondered what those are really like when you sit on them after a while.
After a while, your kidneys just don't appreciate the thumping.
Yeah. Well, I have a friend who's now a retired fireman, as many of them are by the time they're even quite a bit junior to me in age, and he does things, occasionally, and one of his things he gets asked to do is to go, I think it's someplace in Pennsylvania, and I live out on the other coast, as somebody referred to the far Washington, as opposed to the near one here, and he will drive a newly purchased fire truck from Pennsylvania to wherever out in that region of the country the company that bought it, the local fire company, wants it delivered to them. And he did mention that they're not really built for comfort, because you go to the fire and you jump off and you're not going very far. But when you go 3,000 miles, it's quite an experience.
That makes sense.
And I was thinking about being on one of those bikes must have some aspects of that too.
Yeah, after a little while, you're like, okay, I had enough. I'm going home.
Well, it sounds like you lead an interesting and rather varied life, to say the least, Vicenc. But, sort of on that order, we're sort of nearing the end of our conversation, but there is one thing that I wanted to ask you about, because you have a fairly extensive, for a guy that hasn't been in the field terribly long, a pretty extensive list of writings. You want to talk a little bit about some of that, and perhaps why you do it, and even go on and tell the rest of us why it's important that librarians do that.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you what I think. I think one of the reasons, I think a big reason is Penny, right? Mm-hmm. Penny is, as a mentor, you can really ask for better, and she has always been very insistent that scholarship is a very important thing of what we do. It's a big part of what we do. I remember very early on in my career, being pulled aside by Penny and saying, okay, what are you writing on? Mm-hmm. What are you working on? You got this thing published from when you graduated from the program. Now, what's the next thing? Mm-hmm. And so she has really been a driving force in getting me to understand the importance of scholarship. And especially, I'll just say this to any of the young people out there who are just beginning their career and are thinking, I eventually some days would like to become a director. It's very important to start building that portfolio of work. It's very important to start working on a scholarly agenda early. The earlier you do, the easier it becomes.
This is particularly important if you want to be both director and faculty colleague, which is really very important in my opinion.
Exactly right, and I agree with you 100%, and that's always what Penny says. You have to always strive to get that faculty status. You have to be on that equal playing field, because you cannot advocate for the library unless you have a vote at the table.
You won't be at the table.
Exactly right.
And things will get decided, and you'll be
you'll find
you'll find out about them the right way, maybe the wrong way, but you'll
right. Maybe you'll find out.
But they'll have been decided.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. It's that thing that our colleagues that are faculty members, they value the scholarly work. If you don't have the scholarly work, then you're not valued at the table. You really are not.
That's
And
right.
that's what they measure you against. And right or wrong, that's the way things are.
Mhm.
Uh,
Well, that's what the other faculty members do
Right.
besides teaching and
Right.
service. And,
Right.
you know, what do faculty members do? Well, what we do.
Right.
So they expect it.
Right, and that's the thing, is that when you get, and you know exactly how it is, but when you get to the position where you are being put in the group of faculty, then you have to behave like faculty. You can't, you say, well, I got an administrative job, and I got all these other things that I gotta do, and I gotta take care of a staff, and I gotta take care of a budget, and they don't care.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a faculty member, you gotta be producing scholarship, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So, Penny was, a very strong driving force at the beginning of my career to get me going on that path. And I mentioned Alain Levasseur before. I was very lucky to have him be, my faculty mentor, right? As a member of the faculty at LSU, that he took interest in me, and he said, let me take you under my wing, and let me help you, with your scholarly agenda, and let me have you be a co-writer with me, when he really didn't need to. But so that was he is a real true friend in that sense, that he helped me out. So those two people really got me going down that path. And then that was just a thing of keeping it up, right? Once you start the ball rolling, you got to keep it going. And so as I've gone from places, when I was at UDC working on, legal research pedagogy, then I was writing on that, and I was working with my associate director, Helen Fraser, who, another brilliant person. She just, and the other thing is too, that I learned from that experience was that if you have the chance to help somebody else with their scholarship, then do that, right?
Yeah.
Then do that. Then if you got don't be jealous of what you do. Help your colleagues moving forward.
It's interesting, you mentioned Penny Hazelton at the University of Washington, as one of the people who sort of mentored you. I think that's my term, in developing an appreciation of doing and producing scholarship. Penny, of course, studied under Marion Gallagher, who is the person that our profession remembers in the Marion Gould Gallagher Award,
Right.
that is given most every year to at least one or two people. And Marion Gallagher had exactly the same mindset. This was part of our responsibility. She too was keen on being at the table for all the right reasons. Right. And you had to earn being there and kept there. And Penny probably, I'd like to say Marion instilled in her what she's now instilling in you, and probably all the other students who have been going through her program for the last 25 or so years since she took it over.
You are so absolutely right. I mean, that's the continuation of I call her Marion, in between friends, but Mrs. Gallagher, that's a continuation of her philosophy, her tradition, and the things that she valued about our profession, which she was absolutely right.
Yeah.
She was absolutely right. And she laid the groundwork, and we are lucky to have people like Penny who have taken up that baton and carried on.
Yeah, Penny has done, as far as I can tell, a fantastic job of not only following Mrs. Gallagher, but adding and modernizing the program and adapting to changes that were occurring in our profession and our environment.
Right.
And that's very important too.
Right. Yeah. Carrying on, but developing into the future that has become.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're sort of nearing the end of our conversation, but Vicenc, is there anything we have not talked about that you would like to discuss at this time?
Well, I definitely want to go back and mention some people that, because like I said, this whole thing is about the people around you, right? And I've been talking. I mean, I talked about Judy Geyer and Barry Shanks at Franklin Pierce and all those people at the library there that they created that internship for me at the library, that treated me like a member of the staff, that helped me get along, and they were the beginning. They opened that door for me. You know, Penny, of course, and, you know, the Marys, Hotchkiss and Mary Wisner,
Oh, yes.
you know.
Wonderful people.
All the people at UW who were my teachers,
Mhm.
right? Every single one of those staff members and librarians at UW who took the responsibility of being teachers to, you know, every year they do that. They take a new group of people and they take that responsibility very seriously.
Mhm.
And every one of them, you know, they just, you know, Cheryl Nyberg, you know, I mean, everyone. I'm going to start mentioning names and I'm going to forget somebody and I'll get in trouble, right?
You need to get the director out and have it below the camera angle so you can make sure you get everybody.
Right, so everybody, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, my brothers and sisters in the cohort of darkness, class of '05, you know,
The
especially
cohort of darkness.
The cohort of
I'm going to
darkness.
remember that.
That's us, the cohort
This
of
will
darkness.
not get edited out.
No, it better not. You know, so like, you know, like my sisters, Camilla Tubbs and Tina Ching and Mary Beth Williams, you know, who have been supportive and helpful and wonderful people. I love my brothers and sisters dearly, and I can always rely on them to be of help. You know, from there, geez, Billy Joe Coffin, I already talked about,
Yeah.
right? She has been a mentor, a friend, an incredible person that I could at any moment rely on, and has been so fantastic. I can't even begin to put words on it. Barbara Bentliff, you know, Barbara's. I can't even begin to tell you how much I've learned from Barbara. Darcy Kirk, you know, another fantastic, fabulous person, great mentor, great person. Keith Ann Stuyvesant,
Okay.
you know,
Up in
just
Chicago.
up in Chicago, another fabulous mentor, another fabulous help and great friend. You know, I mean, I talk about Rhea Bauer-Thrower and Kleinfelter, and I can just go on and on and on with all these fabulous people that have made by a very short time in this career such a wonderful
Well, I'd be
experience.
taking notes on these names, so I'd be sure to invite them for a conversation. But
Absolutely.
everyone you've named, we've already talked
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe we're doing something right. I don't know.
Well, and I want to throw one more name out. My beautiful wife, Charlene Kane, who, you know, 20 years in this profession, and, you know, who has been a tremendous help for me too.
Oh, that's important.
So, and, you know, and then the people that are coming in the future, right?
Yeah.
You know, there's, I mean, I just had one of my students last year who graduated from Villanova, and she was in my copyright class, and she's now at the program with Penny, and she will be
Seattle,
graduating. Yeah, she'll be graduating in August, and she'll be going out and get a job, and that's the future right there. So, you know, I really, really want to thank you for including me. I really appreciate this, and it really has been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah.
It really
Well,
has.
it's been a real pleasure for me as well. And the whole thing is I think I've already shared many times over with our viewers, is I'm having such a great time doing these. And it's a wonderful opportunity for me to reconnect with friends and make new ones in the field. And hopefully in the process of having all this fun, do something that people find useful, I hope.
That's great.
And I think they do. Yeah.